So I'd like to introduce to you Dayna Williams. I've met her several times. Always lots of energy, always a pleasure. And she is going to talk to us about something very interesting. Even if you're an insider right now and you're working in the field and you're employed by a company, you know, her topic today is absolutely right on in terms of this field. So we're going to learn a little bit about ABCs, and we're going to have a wonderful question and answer period. So with this, Dayna, I'm going to make you the presenter here, and I'm going to unmute everybody for a minute so I can see which Dayna is Dayna here. Okay. So. Make presenter. Okay, so we'll wait for 1 second for Dayna's screen to come up here. And it's a pleasure to welcome Dayna Williams.
Thank you. Let's go ahead. Okay, great. Can everybody see the screen?
I can.
Okay, good. Great, and I just want to go ahead and also mute here. Bobby, where can I go ahead and do that?
Okay. Okay. Dayna, I can't hear you. Okay.
Let's try that.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah. Yep, I can.
Okay. Excellent. So the goal of today's program is to explore. So now I'm hearing some feedback, Bobby. Is there a way that I can mute on my end?
Yep. You're ready to go.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. Dayna, there is a little bit of echo coming from you, so you might want to, if you've got external speakers by your computer, you might want to turn those down.
Has the echo subsided?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's reboot it for a moment. I'm very excited to be with everybody today and explore this topic of leadership. The goal of the program today is to really think about your degree and the program that you've chosen to explore, and within the context of your career. So many of you may be working inside of corporate, and maybe some of you are even dabbling into some freelance work and deciding whether or not going full-time freelance is the right move for you. And so I've put this program together with that in mind, for this to be a bit of a self-reflection exercise to share with you what I've learned over the last 9 years being a fully self-employed instructional designer or solution architect. I also like that terminology as well. I've done both. I've been a learning strategist, solution architect, and instructional designer, really in the sales training space for the last 9 years. So what I've done, and I've tried to take the best of what I've learned over that time and package it together in about 30, 40-minute format so that we can keep this interactive and I can download you with some things to consider so that you can decide, is this the best path for me considering where I am right now in my life? So I would invite questions along the way, and certainly I'll open this up at the end for any questions that you might have. pull from some research here from a company called MBO Partners, and so I would encourage you to write that down. It's a great resource for you to poke around after this presentation. They offer a wealth of knowledge for folks who are consulting and are considering consulting. Again, MBO Partners. But according to research from MBO Partners, an estimated 17.7 million people, they're not necessarily just people in our space, but just people who have a particular set of skills, marketable skills, are working independently in the U.S. today, and that number is expected to rise to 24 million by 2018. So if you're considering this path, you're in pretty good company. What I think is very interesting is that of that number, 64% of these individuals report being highly satisfied. And as you can imagine, they say that they love the flexible schedule and the control over their work-life balance. But I want to do a quick poll here, and you can just kind of chat your responses to me of what you think here. When surveyed, what do you think that independent consultants would cite as their greatest challenge? Remember that they said that their highest satisfaction is they love that work-life balance, which I think we all could agree that that would be really attractive to people. But what would you think is the most or the greatest challenge? A, constant competitive pressures, B, meeting changing client demands, or C, lack of predictable income? Go ahead and just use your chat box. Okay, I'm seeing some B's here, some C's, okay? Okay, so we've got basically around meeting the needs of client demands, lack of predictable income. Okay, these are fair answers. The truth is that certainly while meeting the changing needs of client demands is always a consideration, the research shows that without a doubt, C is the correct answer. So lack of predictable income is what independent consultants cite as their greatest challenge. So let's talk a little bit about things that drive people towards consulting to begin with. And I like to think of this as a bit of a crash of these two things in two terms. One being a crash landing or a soft landing. When you think of a crash landing is something that thrusts you into consulting. So it might be something along the lines of a change in a life circumstance. Maybe it's a sudden job loss. Or maybe it's something that you just absolutely didn't see coming that put you in a situation where maybe you graduated from school and you thought that there was going to be jobs available to you and they just weren't the right salary level. They just weren't really what you were expecting. And so all of a sudden you found yourself seriously considering consulting. I would consider that the crash landing. There's something else, though, that I would call a soft landing. And what I would call a soft landing is a situation where you're gainfully employed and you're seriously considering consulting, and you sort of set yourself up for a bit of a transition by maybe doing some networking and putting some feelers out there and really determining, is there an opportunity for my services? And maybe along the way, you get some inquiries from a client that, leads you to believe that there could be a freelance opportunity for you. You explore that a little bit further, and you recognize that you have an opportunity to transition out of corporate life and into almost a ready-made contract. Now, that's never 100% risk-free, as in there's never anything risk-free when it comes to consulting, but it's a little bit more of a softer landing than obviously the crash landing scenarios that I shared with you before. So I want to pause here for a moment. I want to share a little bit more with you just about my personal story and kind of give you a little bit of an example of how I landed into consulting if you guys want to hear a little bit more about sort of my scenario. When I started off my career, I lived in Los Angeles, and I started off in sales and marketing, and I started off wearing a lot of hats. I worked for smaller companies, and I helped them develop products and bring them to market. Well, one of the things that I was able to do as a result of those roles was focus in on sales training. So after the products were created, there was that need to develop training programs that would help support go-to-market launches within various channels. So I got quite a bit of experience in writing and delivering that training to a variety of different audiences. When I decided to make the move back to the East Coast after 5 years of doing that, I was able to land a job in Philadelphia with a company called Richardson. I don't know if any of you have heard of them, but Richardson's a company that specializes in sales training. And I was employed with them as an actual W-2 employee for quite some time, but I was in an instructional designer role. And even though I had never been formally trained as an instructional designer, it was sort of an opportunity where it was a bit of a career change, but I was able to learn a little bit more on the job. And because they were a consulting firm, they had a whole cadre of clients. And so I got a taste of what that was like. And half their workforce was W-2 employees, and half their workforce, when I say workforce of instructional designers, were actually 1099 freelance consultants. And so after some time, I was able to create enough of a reputation for myself where I was able to approach the company and ask them if I was able to make the transition into a 1099 contractor. And even though it was a bit of a risk because they would be sort of my only client servicing their clients and they wouldn't be able to guarantee me work, I had a pretty good sense that having learned their processes and methodologies and the way they do business, and having built some good reputations with some good clients that would ask for me by name, that it would represent a bit of a soft landing versus a crash landing, and I ended up staying with that company for a good 6 years. So that kind of gives you a bit of a perspective. And then after that 6 years, I had built up enough of a reputation where I was able to go out on my own and secure my own portfolio of clients that I now work directly for. So let me stop there. I've been talking for a bit of time. Any questions so far that you guys want to send me through chat around kind of getting started, or you know, the idea of crash landing versus soft landing? I'll give you a minute if you guys have any questions to chat them in. All right, we'll keep going. All right, so the next section is, oh, okay, we got a question here. Do they think it's easier if you specialize by market? So there's two types of specializations. There's the idea of kind of specializing by verticals, so specializing in finance or maybe like insurance, or there's the idea of kind of specializing by skills. So you heard me say that I specialize in sales training. I definitely think you have a leg up if you specialize in market. Or even by skill. I know for me, there has been a plethora of opportunities that have come my way because I specialized in sales training. When opportunities come down to me versus somebody else, and it's a sales training opportunity, 9 times out of 10 I can sell myself through my experience and my samples versus the other person, as long as I keep myself, you know, keep the energy high and keep the rates competitive. 9 times out of 10 I can win that opportunity. The niches where I see that people are really, really successful are in areas like pharmaceutical, healthcare, as well as financial services, you know, investments, those sort of sectors. So I really believe that when you do specialize, you do give yourself an advantage. People could think it's limiting, but I've not had that be my experience at all. It's a great question. Other question, do you include your client's work in your portfolio? And if so, do you need to obtain a client's approval? Excellent question. You absolutely have to have a portfolio of work. Clients are always going to ask, potential clients are always going to ask to see your samples. And if you're going to reveal the whole kit and caboodle, you absolutely need your client's approval to share that work. Chances are, though, your client isn't going to sign off and give you the opportunity to just share carte blanche everything that you've created for them, because project by project you're signing plenty of non-disclosures and agreements around proprietary information. So there's a way to prepare your sort of sample folder so that you're protecting the IP, but yet showcasing what it is that you've put together. So things like redacting the client's name, genericizing the exercises that you've put together, in some cases using something that you've done, but like kind of, so if you've done e-learning, maybe you've done like a game or some type of you know, I would say like a game or some type of example for them, maybe taking the inspiration for what you've done, but just putting some skin in the game yourself and reinventing the essence of it just for your portfolio so that somebody can see what your capability is in that area. So you might have to put a little bit of effort into it to genericize the work that you've done, but chances are the bones are already there, and you can just, with a little bit of redaction and a little bit of effort, you can create a neutral portfolio that doesn't expose your client or violate any of those agreements, but shows off your abilities. All right, good questions, great questions. Let's move on here for a moment. Is contract work right for me? Okay, so here's the real big question that you really need to ask yourself. We're going to go into a couple moments here of self-reflection, because a lot of the decision to do this is very deeply personal. There's a reason why people stay in their corporate world, or they sort of chart their very bumpy course, and it is a bit of a bumpy course, and go out on their own and they contract. And there's a reason why people, as the research shows, go in and out, and they sometimes spend a few years contracting and then spend a couple of years you know, in corporate and have that be a bit of a pattern throughout their career. But here's the real big question, just your high-level question you have to start off by asking yourself. Your need to chart your own course and be creative and sort of absorb the risks has to override the need that you have for security and routine in order for you to truly enjoy the life of a consultant. And that's just the absolute sort of underlying principle that you have to become at ease with inside yourself. Because as a consultant, the real thrill and the joy that you get is the ability to chart your own course and be creative and kind of ride the wave of the risk. But what you trade for that is the security and the routine that you get with a corporate job. Now, for some people, that corporate stability and routine is what gives them a sense of safety. They love the fact that they can go in every day, have a team around them, and chip away piece by piece at an important initiative and know that they're a part of something grand. Of course, there's drawbacks to that, but generally speaking, there are people that truly love that. Do they love, you know, certain drawbacks? Maybe not. But at the end of the day, if you ask them, that security and routine is what makes them feel happy. If that's the case, if it's truly something that you say works for you, then contract work may not be the best fit. But if deep down inside you come to a point in your mind that charting your own course and being creative really is something that you're willing to say, hey, at all costs, you know, from a risk perspective, that overrides my need for security and routine, contract work might be right for you. Now, there's a lot of text on this slide, but I tried to sit back and reflect on my last 8 or 9 years and come up with some things to consider, things that I would, and I want to try to see if I can move this. I don't know if I can move this, this thing here. I'm trying to move it. There we go. I tried to sit back and consider my last 8 or 9 years and think about if I was sitting with somebody who was seriously considering contract work, what would I share with them? What would I say, here are the things you have to consider to decide if this is truly right for you? So here it goes. We'll walk through these. How comfortable are you with networking? Networking is truly the lifeblood of your business when you're a consultant. You really are out there hustling to get your clients and keep your clients. How comfortable are you with business development and selling yourself? What does your professional network look like now? I know when I started, I had maybe 80 people in my LinkedIn network. Just really took a long time to build. Who could you tap into that might refer you some immediate contract work? Like if you were to go out the door tomorrow, who could give you some immediate contract work? How do you feel about the business of running your business? So setting up an LLC, paying quarterly taxes, negotiating contracts, invoicing customers, collecting receivables. All these things are things that you are responsible for doing that you're not getting paid to do and that you have to tack on top of what you're doing every day for your clients. Here's a big one. This kind of goes back to the risk and the lack of, sort of security and stability. How comfortable are you with a feast or famine life, having multiple requests for your services at one time and at other times experiencing a lapse in work? I had to get very comfortable with the idea that I could have clients, that I could have 3 clients call me at once and ask me at the exact same time, hey, could you just sign this program for me in 3 weeks? And then have a period of time where a month or 2 could go by and I would get no calls, or I would get feedback that my proposal was still sitting on somebody's desk waiting for them to look at it. It's that idea of feast or famine, and how comfortable are you with that? Let me move this up here. How comfortable are you with putting in more than the 9 to 5 when you combine billable time and non-billable time to run and promote your business? Do you have a network of family, friends, and business associates that you can lean on for encouragement and support during this transition? I think it's really important to think about that because we get so focused on our professional life and our professional goals, and we have to ask ourselves, do we have family and friends and business associates that are willing to support kind of this life? Because I think we really need to know, the people in our lives, are they on board with that idea, and are they willing to stand by us and help us? Yep. Let me go back here. I think I got a question. We'll get to your question here on non-billable time. Just give me 1 minute here. We're going to go through the ABCs of consulting, and we'll get through the financial stuff in just a moment. Okay, so here we go. The ABCs of consulting. A, always be developing business. In an ideal world, this kind of goes to the feast or famine idea, but in an ideal world, consultants would go project to project seamlessly without interruption. But quite often, that's not the case. Sales cycles are long, delays happen, and decision makers leave. It's a good rule of thumb to have at least 2 to 3 direct clients who may have the potential to give you work, and 1 to 2 agency relationships, so like recruiters, and multiple connector people or connector relationships that you stay in touch with who can refer you. So this is the idea of networking. When you say, well, who am I networking with, or what's my goal in all of this? Like, what am I going for on day one? What am I shooting for? What you're shooting for is having a portfolio of 2 to 3 direct clients who have the potential to pick up the phone and give you work, 1 to 2 recruiter relationships, and then multiple people who can just connect you to just people who know people that you can stay in touch with and who can refer you to business. Continuing along the lines of always being developing business, networking is the lifeblood of being a consultant. You network with clients even when you're booked on projects, and this is what's hard because you guys know what that's like. When you are on a project, sometimes you are heads down, you are in the weeds, you're banging out that handbook or e-learning project. Last thing you feel like doing after putting in an 8 or 9 hour day is to go to a networking meeting. But that's the discipline that it takes to be a consultant, because you want to keep your name out there and share about those projects that you're working on and the clients who you're working with. You want to just talk with people and say, hey, this is the project that I'm on. This is the type of work that I'm doing. Keep your name out there. Keep yourself fresh so people remember you, because, again, sales cycles are long. You never know what's percolating, and you want to keep your name out there so people think of you first. Network when you're not booked to let people know that you're available. And network with other consultants. Get to know your specialties. Somebody asked a question earlier about specialty. So when I work on sales training projects, or if you have somebody, if you specialize in healthcare, you want to find people who are complementary, who have other specialties. So you guys can have your own little insider network and refer each other business. I have a group of consultants that I meet with that each specialize in a different area of expertise, and we meet for coffee once a month at a diner just to sit down and say, hey, what are you working on? So we can talk and we'll see how we might be able to refer each other business. Network with recruiters. Their opportunities change like the wind, and keeping your name top of mind never hurts. Recruiters tend to be very reactive. They're only thinking about talent when they actually have an opportunity. So finding one that's really good and continuing to check in with them and remind them of you and your skills is always a good idea. Quick poll here. Let me move this down. So use your chat function here, but how much time do you think the average successful independent consultant should spend per month on networking activities? And I've defined them for you. So LinkedIn, association meetings, one-on-ones, and follow-ups. So all those combined activities, how much time do you think the average successful consultant should spend per month? All right, I got a C, got a C, got a C, got a C, getting some consensus here. Getting some consensus, anybody else? You know what? I totally agree with you. Got a B. So here's my thought. When you're first starting out, this is not a scientific poll, this is just kind of based on my experience and what I'm currently doing. When you're first starting out and you're building your business, C is a very appropriate number because you're just getting your name out there and you're working really, really hard to establish your business. And there's not a such thing as no such thing as too much networking. Once your business is established and you have that those two to three clients and your connector relationships and your recruiter relationships, it is completely realistic to spend 20 to 30% of your time networking to keep yourself up. Because you're a business of one, and you want to spend time continuing to move the ball forward and keep your name out there. Okay, B, become fluent in self-employment acumen. So here's where you want to know your costs so that you can appropriately set your rate. There's 3 internal cost centers to consider: your tax withholdings, your business expenses, and your non-billable hours. And I had said to you, we'll get to that in a second here. Self-employment acumen also includes understanding the process of proposals, contracting, and negotiations with clients. I'm not going to have time to go too deeply into proposals and contracting and negotiating with clients. We could have a whole nother session on that, to be honest with you. But I'll make one comment about that, and the reason why I put that on this slide is because you are a company of one. You're competing against other people and other companies for the same piece of business. So you want to really up your game when it comes to your knowledge of proposals and contracting and even negotiating, because you want to know your value and you want to be able to get what you're worth, what your services are worth, and you're going to, in some cases, be negotiating with people who negotiate for a living, procurement, or just other stakeholders in the company who, or other constituents in the company who negotiate for a living. So it's just really important to really just understand the process. If you don't know the process, there's plenty of resources and peers, I'm sure, that will help you with it. But don't skip over this part, and don't shrink back. Really just kind of put the pedal to the metal and really understand how to do this very professionally. Here's where we kind of talk about, and this is a screenshot, and I invite you to go to MBO Partners again to play with this. This is a calculator around calculating billable hours, and I just pulled a screenshot off of this for you for the purposes of this presentation. But you can actually go to MBO Partners and practice playing around with their calculators, and it's a really interesting thing to do. In the beginning, obviously, you're going to have to make some assumptions. After doing this for quite some time, I was able to actually put some numbers in here. I can kind of move this down again for you so you can sort of see some numbers here. But this gives you some sense here of what you can, what kind of time you're spending dedicating to consulting versus, the hours are going to be billable versus non-billable. So just consider that. I'll give you a minute to kind of look at the slide, but just kind of consider the time that you spend on business development, contract development, tracking hours, invoicing, professional development, administration, those sorts of things. And again, there's the website there for you at the bottom. Here's another big thing, another part of the calculator that I would invite you to spend some time looking at. This is calculating your expenses. So if you have your total gross wages, which you'd like to make at the bottom, we would have here, so you're calculating your rate based on your based on what you're expecting to bring in minus your your hours. Hang on, let me go back here. Your hours versus your non-billable hours and your expense minus your expenses. And again, you can play with these calculators. These calculators will help you set your rate. So you see here, this gives you a guideline, things you might not have thought about: insurance, retirement, communication, all of these things. Now, what's interesting about it is, you can talk to other people and get a sense of what they charge for similar services in your industry. And then when you put this type of detail into the calculator, you can see and come down here and look at your what you think your wages are going to be, what your profit margin, your total profit margin, your billable hours, your annual expenses. You can start to see if your hourly rate is going to cut it, or if you need to, if you can, have it be more competitive, or if you need to raise it. So this just gives you some data to work with. I can give you guys a range. I can say that, just really depends on, so I'm going to give you guys two senses. When it comes to rates, I can give you two perspectives to come from. There is your direct rate, and the direct rate that you charge when you have secured a client on your own, meaning that you did not work with an agency or a recruiter, such as Training Pros, where they did not go out and get a client for you. But the rate that you would charge your client is, would be higher. So for, a range in that case for an instructional designer could be anywhere between, call it, $80 an hour up to, $100, $125 an hour, versus if you went through directly through a recruiter where there was a middleman involved, they're going to take a fee from you, and that is standard, that is across the board. And so those rates are going to be a little lower. Those rates are going to be anywhere between $55 an hour up to, call it, $80, $85 an hour, depending on so many different variables, but levels of experience, types of skill, industry, so on and so forth. So use that barometer and then play with these calculators, and that'll give you some sense of kind of, how to go about thinking about your rate. And that leads me right into this next slide. Companies need to know what you're good at so that they can hire you. Most companies have permanent teams but they still have projects. They need to find the perfect match between the project that they have and you as a contract resource. So that formula for that perfect match is really the industry expertise. So somebody asked earlier, does, expertise or specialization really matter? I think it kind of does. Because, I'll show you some research in a minute that validates this, but industry expertise plus company knowledge, so think of that as sort of your sort of important first level, plus the right skills and the right rate equal the perfect match. This is really the stew by which companies make decisions right here. And here's the research. Joint research by, at the time, it was ASTD National, and IBM revealed that when evaluating a potential contract provider, the resource's knowledge of the client's organization and industry was deemed as the most important consideration in the decision-making process. So here are two phrases that have always worked very well for me in proposals and when selling myself in interviews. I specialize in, companies hire me for. Straight and very, very simple to the point. I specialize in, and companies hire me for. These are also very good in networking situations. Okay, so that's what I have. Any questions with regards to anything that I talked about, the ABCs, setting your rates, anything that we talked about in the presentation? I'm open for questions. Was this helpful? Great. Excellent.
Well, so much for unmuting people. So much fun. Thanks very much, Dayna. Very helpful, folks. Hello. Aha! There, I'm back, sorta, kinda. Hello there. Can you give me?
Are you a presenter?
Maybe I don't want it back. Hello, folks. Okay. The audio there is
Unmuted.